ki ngā hauiwha, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. Ngā nui, tēnā koutou. Ko waio, ko Jane tuku ingoa, no Ara Taiohi hau, no te upuka o te ika hau. So kia ora everybody, my name's Jane. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this day with you. I have the privilege of working for this organisation called Ara Taiohi. Our name, Ara, pathways to or from. Taiohi is a literal word for young people. So our name means pathways to or from young people, and we are the peak body for youth development in Aotearoa. I like to joke that I have been in this job as CEO for about a year, and I still don't really know what a peak body does, because it's a really strange phrase in my personal opinion. But I know what we do. So we hold the space nationally for young people, for youth work, and for youth development. So we're a sector-based group, we're a membership-based organisation, and a number of our members are actually in the room. So Mahi to groups like the YMCA, Scouts, Duke of Edinburgh, etc. Lots of different groups that work with young people come under the umbrella of Ara Taiohi. And everything we do is looking at what needs to happen in that national or that central space that can make a difference to the work that's happening with young people on the ground. I'm not going to go through what we do. I'm hoping that you'll be so inspired that you'll all go to our website and find that out in your own time. But I will share with you our vision. Te pua waitanga Taiohi a Aotearoa, that we would see the young people of Aotearoa thriving. Many of our young people in Aotearoa are thriving, but we can't look at our stats and kid ourselves that all of the young people in Aotearoa are thriving. And we're very aware of groups like yourselves. You know, we know what physical activity, we know what the outdoors, we know what sports and recreation do for the well-being of our young people. We also know that youth work, which we kind of call the PO of the youth development sector, so our sector is heaps of people who work with young people, most of whom wouldn't call themselves youth workers. But youth work as a core kind of profession is really like the core or the centre of that practice. Many of you will be employed youth workers who also are trained in the outdoor space, and that's like the ultimate kind of like Uber kind of space for you to, person for you to employ. But for many, you won't necessarily employ youth workers as such, but the ways that youth workers are trained and actually often intuitively work with young people, I think can be really important to integrate into your mahi, so that we start to see some of this, so that we start to see a shift in some of the stats that shame us as a nation. So I'm again stoked to be invited, and Mahi to Ben, who invited me along. Hey, so I've put this up to show you, don't take photos of it, it's hideous, to show you what was, okay? You'll all know that the government has released the Child Youth Wellbeing Strategy. The Ministry of Youth Development is working currently on a youth plan that is the kind of outworking of the Child Youth Wellbeing Strategy. And so we kind of have a new sort of strategic framework that we're operating under. Back in 2002 was the first time we had a significant youth development strategy for Aotearoa. It was integrated into legislation, and I would say it was really, really significant for the sector, the youth development sector. It was quite defining for us, and it actually was really, really good. It's just when you look back on it, it kind of actually is quite out of date and not fit for purpose anymore. We've been on a process over the last year to year and a half of reviewing the youth development strategy of Aotearoa, and in particular reviewing the core principles, because those core principles are the how that you guys have been hearing about this morning. They're the how do you work with young people if you actually want to see them have what we call positive youth development. If we want to see them thrive, how do we work with them? And these principles are really core and they inform that. The Ministry of Youth Development, the Vodafone Foundation and Ara Taiohi, so government, the sector and philanthropy partnered in this journey to do that, and we see the principles I'm about to tell you about and the youth plan sitting alongside each other and is essential for our child youth wellbeing strategy to be achieved. So that's a bit of background. This plan here was put in place in 2002. I want you to take 1 minute, because I've only got 20, to talk to the person next to you about what were you doing in 2002. Okay, I was having my first child, so what were you doing in 2002? Okay, I'm going to bring you back. If you didn't get a chance to share with the person next to you, aroha mai, but that can be what you talk about at afternoon tea time. 2002 wasn't that long ago, but when you think about the things that have happened in Aotearoa, New Zealand since 2002, it's quite mind-blowing. 2002 was only just after, for the first time ever, the young woman sang the national anthem of New Zealand in Te Reo at a rugby game. I don't know if you guys remember the huge outcry there was after that rugby game, and now we do it all the time, every day. And you look at something like Te Wiki or Te Reo Māori that we had this year, it is a totally different landscape. 2002 was before the Marriage Equality Act and the Civil Union Act had happened. 2002 was 5 years before the release of the first iPhone. Yeah, so in just those 3 ways, think about how much has shifted and changed over the period of 17 years. So that resulted in us going, actually, these principles are amazing, they're core, they're sound, but they really do need to be overviewed. I'm not going to take you through all of this. I quite like this flash circle thing, but I really don't know what to point at, so I'm just going to stop. But what I would say is the journey we went on, there were 4 strands that went into how we reviewed that. We wanted to review it, and actually I'll point here because now I've got something to point to. We wanted to include the voice of Taiohi, the voice of young people, the voice of Kaimahi, the people who work with young people, and again, Mahi to some of you in the room who I know were active as we went round and gave feedback and inputted into our new strategy. We also wanted to ensure that we engaged with Te Ao Māori, so we had heaps of hui around the country on that. And for the first time ever, so mātauranga, that's around good information. 2002, when we put in place our original strategy, it was based on the best of research that was available at the time. It was all North American, because that's all we had. In the last 17 or 20 years really, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have so much amazing research and literature that is Aotearoa based, that can inform our principles. But because of our size, both of the sector we work in and of our nation, it kind of just disappears, and we don't gather it and we don't capture it. So Ara Taiohi, we didn't do the work. We got the Auckland University for us to we commissioned the first ever Aotearoa-based literature review into positive youth development, and we used that literature to inform what our new look principles would be like. That resulted in our new look principles of youth development that we call Mana Taiohi. So Mana, or you'll actually see in the middle of your handouts, you'll see the full descriptions on what each of these are. So Mana is around, I'm going to do a terrible job, actually I'm going to do it here because then I can do a better job of it. Mana is around the strengths-based or the mana-enhancing way that we would choose to work with young people. And we have these 8 kupu, or 8 words that come through all the strands that I've talked about, that highlight, first of all, the mana that a young person, the mana that a young person has, so what they bring with them into the situations you have. And then secondly, the bottom 4 look at how can youth development enhance this mana, or how can we support the development of a young person's mana in that situation. So I'll go to the next slide, and that shows it to you in a different way. In the centre you have the mana that comes with a young person, or that a young person brings, or that they carry. That starts with their mauri. So we fuel the mauri, or the life spark of young people, supporting the development of their identity. They come with their whakapapa, so what comes before, what's behind them, what comes before them, but also the whakapapa we have as a nation. So we need to be aware of what comes before us, because so much of what's gone before explains where we stand now. Hongonga are the connections that a young person has around them. And in this regards, particularly our young people wanted to highlight that connections are relational, so family, friends, peers, that group. They are relational, they are physical, they are connected to the whenua or to the land, and this is your guys like a cup of tea or piece of cake or whatever the phrase is. Yeah, this is where you excel. And digitally, yeah, so we need to be aware of the connections in the digital world. And Mahi to Nathan, was it? And your kōrero, actually both Nathan and forgotten the name of the amazing person from Waisa, but actually both looking at that digital space and how we utilise that with our young people. And then finally, te ao. Not that young people come with the world on their shoulders, but we need to be aware of the of the big stuff that impacts our young people. So the start of our framework is acknowledging that a young person doesn't come to any of the spaces that we operate in without stuff with them. Yeah, they are bringing all this with them, and we need to acknowledge the mana that comes with that. Then we look at how does youth development enhance their mana. We'll see whakawhanaungatanga is the start, so that we prioritise quality relationships. I appreciate for many of you, that is not something, if you work with a young person for a short period of time, I did Outward Bound a few times, and we get these young people for 8 days or 21 days or whatever the case may be. There's some challenges in that space, but I think youth work is really good at maximising the relationships. But I think in those spaces, we tend to rely on the relationships that are happening between the young people and creating a framework for that, and those are ongoing. So we acknowledge that youth development approaches prioritise whakawhanaungatanga, taking time to build and sustain quality relationships. Manaakitanga, with young people, we uphold and extend manaakitanga. Manaaki is about the duty of care that we have to young people. We have a responsibility to care for the young people that we work with. Whai wahitanga I want to come back to, because I think it's one that's really important for you in your mahi. And then finally, mātauranga. With young people, we are empowered by rich and diverse mātauranga, informed by good information. And I believe the statistics that we just heard, 41% of people now choosing to check the weather, they're informed by good information before they go out. Yeah. So we can kind of, in many ways, these seem obvious, but the process to get to these has just got so much depth and richness to it. I wanted to highlight whai wahitanga. This is likely to be a kupu or a phrase that perhaps is new for many of us. So youth participation is what we had in our old practices. Co-design is the current kind of buzzword, yeah? Doing stuff with young people, not to young people in those situations. One of the challenges we have culturally, because of course we're informed by Te Ao Māori, one of the challenges we have culturally is youth participation, if you look at its roots, goes back to things like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the right of a young person to have a say in things that affect them. Very individualistic when you think of it that way. And so we had some challenges. How do we translate this idea of youth participation or youth voice into a framework that actually this is only considered in a collective space? And we went on a real journey, and I have to say it took us quite some time to get there. We ended up getting some, first of all, no, actually I won't do that because I ran out of time. We ended up getting the Māori Language Commission to support us in finding the right phrase, and whai wahitanga is what has been kind of gifted from that space. And when I spoke to the Minister for Youth, Minister Hinare, who is a translator himself, in fact I think he translates league games commentary on TV, and he saw this phrase, he said, that's perfect, yeah? So what it means for us in this room, when we're needing to prove to somewhere, hypothetically like Sports NZ, that we're working with young people in a way that is about co-design, or various buzzwords, whai wahitanga, acknowledging the mana of young people in community, empowering this space of whai wahitanga, participation, agency and responsibility. What does it look like to engage with young people in creating the various programs and things that we have? That's the framework, and I'm super keen for you to take our beautiful new handouts and things, and I'm very happy. I will have to dash away immediately after this to my daughter from her gymnastics because my partner's away, so I'll be rushing out the door. But I'm really keen to if anybody wants to just discuss, to talk, to find out more about what being part of Ara Taiohi is, and particularly if you want to just unpack some of these things, because it's been a real gloss over. I believe Ben said you've got 20 minutes and your job is to make them want more. So I'm hoping I've done a good job. But I wanted to share a story. Now, I appreciate this is a sports story, and not everybody here is like sports specifically, but it's a really good story about this youth development way of working and how different it is from perhaps sometimes what we've done traditionally. And I felt like Dylan's story would be the best example I have that could just start to help you get your heads around how does this look differently? Yeah, what could it look like? So Dylan used to coach basketball. He then went away and did some other things and kind of came back into coaching, and he was coaching an under 14 team. There were 2 teams that represented New Zealand overseas. There was like the top team, and then there was the team of the rest, you know. And the top team was intended to do really, really well in the competition. And Dylan was teaching them, and when I say the rest, like they were still really good because they're still representing New Zealand, but they weren't expected to do as well as the top team. So this is about Dylan. He works in Taupo for Youth Town. I really made the decision I would focus on strengths rather than traditional coaching. So mana, strengths-based, is coming through here. Even with the reluctancy of my assistant coach, who was very wary of me at the start of the tour, considering this was a New Zealand team and we were there to win. I focused less on basketball and more on building connection, so that's honga. We did little things, like changing where the assistant coach sat. He sat in the middle of the bench, and his role was to give strengths-based feedback to the boys. This was not natural for him, but he bought into it, and by day 3 he was sold. We had one boy that was unable to play due to religious beliefs, so we got him to be an assistant coach, and he helped co-design our game plan, and co-coach the team in our quarter-final and semi-final. Great example of acknowledging what this young person brought with him, his mauri, his whakapapa, and then how, with the young person whai wahitanga, they looked at how that young person could be involved. I focused on whenever I subbed out a player, I would give them one thing I thought they did really well. Give them eye contact and touch, a handshake or a hand on the shoulder. The reason for this was because he noticed that for a lot of these boys, when he asked, why do you think you were subbed out, the answer with most of the boys was because we did something wrong, which was definitely not the case. He wanted them to sit down happy and achieved, as well as ready to go back in and do more of what they can do well, which only made them more confident and to try something that they didn't do so well, which to him was growth. It seems elementary, but we didn't focus on winning, and we won games. And then he goes on to say a few other things. So for me anyway, this is a great example of how taking some of these principles and bringing them into the various contexts that you're working in can actually see better outcomes. And that's my 2-minute sign. So that was a piece, that was 2 minutes, and that's exactly where I wanted to finish as far as the content, but happy to take questions. Okay, this is a self-review tool we've just developed. If you would like to check out how you're going under this framework, Ara Taiohi framework, it's a quick half-hour online assessment. You can get your governance, your management and your youth workers to do, and you'll get immediate feedback, as you can see here. You'll get immediate feedback around where you might be developing, where you might be proficient, where you might be transforming. You get pretty graphs. And you also get recommendations about how you might look to build those in, based on Ara Taiohi and the Code of Ethics for Youth Work in Aotearoa. And that is my last slide. So any questions? Or reflections or thoughts?
We've got time. So.
Yeah, we've got a minute and a half. I was real quick with my last slide.
Did the not so good team visa?
Oh, they did. They won, and there were boys and parents of the other team who were approaching Dylan and wanting to change teams, which isn't necessarily what he was intending to do. But again, showed that difference in approach. It's kind of a Walt Disney movie in the making, I have to say. But yeah, there's something kind of really quite beautiful and substantial underneath it.